YouTube as well on my YouTube channel at The Sergio Show. So if you want to see my actual live reactions whilst I'm saying all this stuff to you, you can tune in on YouTube as well. Anyway, Shane Van Gisbergen, like I said, he came back to NASCAR for for an Xfinity Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and he came in third place, which is highly commendable, honestly. Like, this dude just, has he found his sweet spot in NASCAR? That's my question, honestly. It wouldn't be unrealistic to say otherwise, because the thing with the V8 Supercars Championship is their cars are very comparable to NASCAR Cup Series race cars in the fact that they're massive, huge cars that are just based off of their actual counterparts, like their actual road counterparts and stuff. So there's that for you, which I think it makes it all very interesting. Oh shoot, I forgot about that. Excuse that, everybody. That is entirely my mistake. I did not mean to do that, but either way, we're gonna. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so Shane Van Gisbergen just goes in, whoops the field, and now he's back in the Xfinity Series for third place at Atlanta. So my question is, has he found his sweet spot in NASCAR? It's comparable, it's possible. Like I was saying before I accidentally hit the play button by mistake, V8 Supercars and NASCAR Cup Series race cars are very comparable in their body design, in their handling format, in their horsepower. Both of them use V8 engines. You know, I would admittedly one day like to see a V8 Supercar race against a NASCAR car, but not just like for a stunt, but like actually, like a big exhibition race down in Australia or up here in the States. I think it would be pretty cool. Shane Van Gisbergen's high performance here in NASCAR, I bet, is bringing in a lot of Australian fans, or at least NASCAR starting to be known amongst Australians, which I think is very good for the sport. It's always good for NASCAR to expand. They are talking about international events coming in 2025, possibly. One of them, the rumor is, and take this with a grain of salt, my friends, there's a rumor out there that the NASCAR Cup Series might race in Canada in 2025, or even in Mexico with the NASCAR Clash. We'll have to wait and see. Following the success, or lack thereof, of the NASCAR Clash at the LA Coliseum, which, of course, as we all know, was completely rained out, and it was going to be rained out, so they brought it up to a Saturday night showdown rather than the originally scheduled Sunday afternoon event. So, given that the NASCAR Mexico Series joined the NASCAR Cup Series there, and it put on a pretty good show, I think it's safe to say NASCAR is trying to expand internationally. And Shane Van Gisbergen's strong finishes here these past few races, they might actually benefit also in that NASCAR might be able to get an Australian fan base or a New Zealand fan base. Shane Van Gisbergen, mind you, is a three-time V8 Supercars champion. There's multiple NASCAR champions, like multiple-time NASCAR champions, though none have been crowned recently. The year 2020 saw Chase Elliott win his first NASCAR championship. The year after, Kyle Larson also won his first NASCAR championship. The year after that, Joey Logano would win his second NASCAR championship. So not since 2022 have we seen a repeat champion, because the most recent NASCAR champion, Ryan Blaney, he's also a first-time champ. So it kind of helps that NASCAR is producing first-time champions all across the board. But ultimately, what I think I want to see is better, like stronger performances also from Shane Van Gisbergen. Not that his performances aren't strong already. To win in your first NASCAR race is already crazy. I think it was like 60 or so years since before Shane Van Gisbergen won his first NASCAR race. I think it hadn't happened in over 60 years. So that's like a massive boost in terms of credibility. So there's that, and a bunch of first-time NASCAR champions. And I mean, we're still waiting on our first international champion of the sport. Daniel Suarez could be the first to do it because he is the only Mexican driver in the field, and he's the only international driver currently in the NASCAR Cup Series. I know there's a few more in like the lower tier series, but none have hit the big spot yet, aside from Daniel Suarez and Shane Van Gisbergen, who came in and won right off the bat. So it'll be interesting to see. I think this could add up to a very interesting international expansion phase for NASCAR, but they first got to focus on home. Honestly, I did a presentation before this show. I was in a class and I did a presentation on NASCAR and how their drivers are not being put in the spotlight enough, especially after they're pulling off big things like Ryan Blaney winning the NASCAR championship last year, William Byron winning the Daytona 500 in a very bizarre circumstance, And don't get me started with Atlanta this past weekend. We are going to be talking about that very, very soon here on the show. And we're going to be talking about that quite a bit for quite some time, even after this show is over for today. So, yeah, using these big events, NASCAR's got to really promote. And that's how they're going to get their international fan base. They're already taking some good steps in that measure. I don't know if anyone here or on the comment section wants to chime in also and see what NASCAR can do better. But my personal opinion is they're on the right track, but they got to really double down on it. They really got to show that they want these international fans to come in. And honestly, I can't blame them. I would love to see international races for NASCAR racing. Like, I think it'd benefit everybody. So, honestly, we'll have to wait and see. Well, we will have to wait and see. But that is the first topic of the show this afternoon. The second topic we have is a very, very peculiar one. On the note of Australia/New Zealand, the Ford Supervan 4.2 was developed by Ford to be this sort of weird all-electric racing van. Now, don't expect to see this thing competing at, like F1 races or anything like that. This is more so of a show car, in a sense. And having seen it, I haven't seen it in person, but I will say it's a very peculiar looking vehicle. Like, it looks like it's based off of a Ford Transit, a European spec, mind you. Now, the Ford Supervan 4.2 packs over 1,400 horsepower, which is equivalent to the Ford Mustang Mach-E 1400 show car that also is, out there performing stunts. And this thing has quickly become renowned just recently because it is now known for turning the fastest lap ever for a closed-wheel vehicle at Australia's world-famous Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit. If you haven't heard about this racetrack, you have now. Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit is a racetrack down in in a little town called Bathurst in Australia. I believe it's in the state of Queensland, if I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. I don't know my Australian map. But anyway, the Bathurst 1000 is its biggest event. It's basically the Australian version of like the Daytona 500 here in America, or the Indy 500 for that matter. Like, from what I've spoken to some of my Australian buddies, that if you're a race car driver, you could be winning everything and anything, like championships and big races. But if you haven't won the Bathurst 1000, you really didn't do much. Like, you're gonna have that big old asterisk, freaking Dale Earnhardt Sr. style, when he won 7 championships and not the Daytona 500 until 1998. That's when his career was basically like top dog. Rest in peace, Dale. So yeah, that's the background on Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit for you. And the Ford Supervan 4.2 just turned the fastest lap ever for a closed-wheel vehicle there. It was a lap time of 1 minute 56.325, which, like I said, that's actually pretty good considering the track is almost 4 miles in length and features a lot of different things like elevation changes and, big curves and small curves and super tight, narrow roads. Mind you, part of the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit actually takes up actual city streets, but they're not actually in no downtown. Like, it's out in the valley and all that. So that helps. That they can close up those portions. So let me look up what was the fastest lap. What's fastest closed wheel vehicle lap before this? Closed wheel vehicle lap. Because now that the Ford Supervan has it at 1 minute 56.3. 1 minute 56.3. That is the official time that it took in order to do it. I forgot who else had done it prior, but it doesn't help that for some reason this computer is reading everything to me in the Chinese language. And I'm sorry, I don't speak Chinese. The fastest lap time prior to that was in an Australian Supercars Top 10 shootout. By comparison, the pole time for an Australian Supercar race, which was held that very same weekend, was a 2 minute 6.5465. So 2 minutes 6 seconds for a V8 Supercar to lap Mount Panorama, 1 minute 56 for the Ford Supervan to do it. It's all very weird, but honestly, I think it is a very good thing for the sport. Not just for V8 Supercars, but for Australian racing in general. I think it's all very good and very well. All right, y'all. So from here on out, we're going to be talking about 2 big things. We're going to be talking about the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway and what's coming up in Vegas for NASCAR. And then finally, we're going to dig into a preview of the 2024 Formula One season, which is set to kick off this Saturday in Bahrain. So before we do that, I got to readjust some things here. So I'm going to play you a couple songs. One is familiar, 1035, Tiesto Tate McRae is headed your way here shortly. Stay tuned with us because we've got a lot to talk about here on Grand Prix Talk in regards to this past weekend's race and what's coming up this weekend for NASCAR and Formula One. Stay with us, team. We will be right back. How come I can barely hear anything? I don't know. But what's good, chat? How y'all doing? Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. It's nice to hear from y'all once again. And, you know, if you want to tune in also just the audio only, 22westmedia.com. 22westradio.com is the place to do it. So now I'm going to get set up here because I ironically got locked out of the studio for some reason. Like, there was nobody here. They were all in a meeting, so I had to get someone to let me into the studio, which barely gave me any time at all to set up, which wasn't fun. Either way, we're here. That's what matters. We're good. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna set up here, and if y'all want to leave any comments and such, how y'all doing? How goes your day? Please do let me know. I am very interested in hearing about what you guys have been up to. I know I haven't done much as far as the ANCI, but, you know, life and college. So, yeah. Anyway, you're in the chat. See what y'all up to. Yes, come in.
How's it going?
Hey, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How'd it go?
Well, setting up was a little bizarre, but so far I'd say we're off to a good start. Now I'm setting up here.
I heard you had trouble getting in.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, we had a staff meeting, so that's why no one was here.
Gotcha.
Who let you in?
Somebody's like some lads who were working with the ASI, I think.
Building managers?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was them.
That happens. I would just ask, building managers if there's no one in either office.
For sure, man.
Just wanted to check something.
All right, man. All right, chat. Radical stuff, man. Thank you, Rogue Legend. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Good to hear from you again. Let's get back here onto the show. Oh, you know what? I just remembered there's like a brief promo, so I'm just going to continue setting up. Man, I love Twice. Genuinely speaking, Twice makes for a fantastic road group, legitimately speaking. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Grand Prix Talk. We are talking about NASCAR at Atlanta Motor Speedway. My goodness, what a race that was from what fan reactions have been. You just heard 1035 by Tiesto and Tate McRae, followed by K-Pop Corner and Twice's I Can't Stop Me. That was a brief preview of that song. Shout out K-Pop Corner. Like the promo said, tune in Tuesdays, Thursdays. All right, back to Grand Prix Talk, back to racing. We are talking about Atlanta Motor Speedway, which, like I said, that left quite a lot to talk about. Let me walk you through what was a very bizarre race here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. It started off with qualifying. Qualifying by itself was already one of the most insane things that we've seen in quite some time. Michael McDowell, who up until this point only had one race win to his name, which was the 2021 Daytona 500, would actually lead the field to the green flag on Sunday. Teammate Joey Logano, actually not teammate, but Ford co-driver Joey Logano for Team Penske would start off second place. Kyle Busch for RCR Racing would start off third, with Todd Gilliland If you've never heard of that name before, don't worry. I'm kind of surprised that he's up here also. Fourth place is where Todd Gilliland would start off. More familiar names would line up 5th and 6th with Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney. Chris Buescher and Austin Cindric, who are both previous race winners, would start off 7th and 8th. And Chase Briscoe and Austin Dillon, a former Daytona 500 champion, would roll off in 10th place. Previous Daytona 500, the most recent Daytona 500 champion, William Byron, who won last week, would start off 11th. Martin Truex Jr. would start off 12th. Denny Hamlin and Josh Berry would start off 13th and 14th, with Noah Gragson and Harrison Burton 15th and 16th. Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace line up 17th and 18th, and Tyler Reddick and Ryan Preece line up 19th and 20th. Now, that's how everyone lined up for the start of the race, or at least the top 20. You know, the rest are a little all over the place. Where did the eventual race winner line up? He lined up 23rd. Keep an eye on that. So, race gets underway. Michael McDowell and Joey Logano lead them to green. And only one lap later, on lap number 2, we get the big one. Sparked by Austin Dillon and Martin Truex Jr. It was only the second lap. And I was admittedly a little concerned because I thought, okay, we saw this last week at Daytona where they wrecked right like only a few laps in. Was it like, were we about to get some choo-choo style racing, or were they gonna be okay and just carry on racing like in full send? Yeah, I don't know, man. It turned out they'd be okay, but there was a wreck. I'll try and describe it as best I can because it kind of happened a little quick. So I'm about to mute this video here, and I'm going to slow it down so I can best describe it to you. So, lap number 2 gets underway. They're on their way to turn number 1, and there's just a slight bit of contact between Martin Truex Jr. and Austin Dillon that sends Dillon spinning out of control, off of the racetrack and into the apron, and everyone else trying to avoid him just follows suit. It's just the way it is at these super speedway races. Bubba Wallace was involved. I believe Noah Gragson was involved also. It's kind of hard to tell from this camera angle, admittedly, but because of all the smoke that just piled up from all of those burning, like all the tires smoking up and everything. Don't worry, nobody caught fire. But yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, but definitely Wallace and Gragson were involved. Dillon and Truex were involved as well. Christopher Bell was involved. Tyler Reddick was also involved as well, as was the 31. I believe that's Justin Haley. Like, it's just a matter of everyone trying to avoid getting hit, but then in the midst of all that, like, they're just piling into each other while trying to avoid, because the track is just so narrow, you really don't have much room to do anything at all. Now, fortunately, after that incident, there wasn't much to report until lap number 53, when Kyle Busch tapped Denny Hamlin, his former teammate, and Hamlin spun out completely unassisted. It was all him. And also we had another spin in the form of Chris Buescher. Let me see. Yeah, so Chris Buescher also had a brief spin in the middle of stage number 1. Chris Buescher, he drives the number 17 Ford Mustang for RFK Racing, and he just completely lost it on his own, if I'm not wrong. Right in front of William Byron, no less, the 2024 Daytona 500 champ, who was racing alongside Denny Hamlin. So Chris Buescher, he just gets slightly loose, just a little itty bit. And from there on out, it's just, there's not much you can do. Like, once you lose control like that in a racetrack like this, you're pretty much a sitting duck. William Byron barely avoids him, so he's fine to continue. On the note of Denny Hamlin, by the way, he would spin out later on. Denny Hamlin would, like I said, he made a little bit of contact with the 8th car of Kyle Busch, which sent Hamlin spinning out completely unassisted. After that little tap, it was just him alone spinning into the apron of the racetrack. Fortunately, it looked like Hamlin didn't get much damage, so he would be fine to continue, but this would set up a one-lap shootout to end stage number 1 of the race. And I'm watching this again right now as I speak, and it's a 4-way battle between Michael McDowell, Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, and Kyle Larson, though Kyle Busch just manages to peek his way into the battle, which makes it a 5-way tandem here. And as they go into turn number 3, they're side by side are Blaney and Chastain. Michael McDowell surprisingly is able to keep himself away from everyone else, and he easily wins stage number 1, ahead of Ross Chastain, excuse me, just barely. Ross Chastain claims second place, if I'm not wrong, for stage number 1. So not too much to report in stage number 1. The results are, okay, I actually was incorrect. Ross Chastain got third, not second. So the stage 1 top 10 are Michael McDowell, Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, first, second, and third, respectively. Kyle Larson, the two Kyles actually, Larson and Busch, 4th and 5th. Martin Truex Jr., Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 6th and 7th. Bubba Wallace, William Byron, and Todd Gilliland round out the top 10 for stage number 1. So stage 1, aside from those two incidents, not much to report. Stage 2 gets underway with, after pit stops, Todd Gilliland would lead them to green. Joey Logano would still be second, but it's worth noting, before I continue, this is a pretty significant thing for Joey Logano, because just recently it's come out that Joey Logano has been penalized for gloves, for some really weird glove materials that he has that he was using during the race in Atlanta. And because of that, he was actually sent to the back of the field after lap number 1. He had to serve a drive-through penalty, so he was already a lap down. Suddenly, he's back in contention, as he was running in second place at the start of stage number 2 of the race, with Corey LaJoie and Chris Buescher behind. Now, there wasn't too much to report throughout most of the stage, until later on with 26 laps left in the stage, when coming into pit road, William Byron and Michael McDowell crash with 25 laps left in stage number 2. Now, how exactly did this happen, I hear you ask? I have no idea. This was a very bizarre mistake. I have a feeling that either one of the two made contact, or the more likely scenario, they just lost control of the race car. I'm looking at the replay right now. William Byron, he's fine. Oh, it was Michael McDowell who got slightly loose. He must have hit something on the ground, and then he took William Byron with him, because William Byron was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Very unfortunate. And then that's just about as much as we could report. Stage number 2, let's see. 1 lap left in stage number 2. We're going to fast forward to that. And there is a yellow on the course because of Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Chris Buescher. These 3 crash into the outside retaining wall on the final lap of stage number 2, putting an early end to that stage. 2 corners too early, I'm afraid. Alright, so that happened, and at the front of the field, because whenever a caution flies, remember, the field is frozen. However, wherever you are, when the yellow comes out, that's exactly where you are when that yellow's out. I don't know why I said that. Now I feel like Will Buxton explaining the obvious. Anyway, stage winner is Austin Cindric for stage number 2. Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney round out 2nd and 3rd. Daniel Suarez would finish 4th. Martin Truex Jr. would finish 5th. And the rest of the top 10 are Todd Gilliland, Brad Keselowski, Harrison Burton, Chase Briscoe, and Chase Elliott. So the 2 Chases are finishing 9th and 10th in this stage respectively. Moving on to the final stage of the race, which would take us through the remaining 90 or so laps of the race. The stage 3, the final stage, got underway on lap 170 of 260 that were scheduled to be run that afternoon. And once again, it would be Todd Gilliland leading the field to green flag, but this time he had Brad Keselowski of RFK Racing lining up alongside him. Keselowski quickly gets away to an early lead before Todd Gilliland takes it back, thanks to a little push from Denny Hamlin, who is honestly one of the enemies of NASCAR right now. And the inside lane at the early on in that race seems to be the lane to be at. And it shows because Gilliland was quickly pulling away. And from here on out is when pandemonium ensues. There's like several cautions going into the final stage of the race. The first one of which happens with 62 laps to go, when Chase Elliott, the hometown hero, spins out early on, and he goes for a wild ride, freaking Lightning McQueen style, into the inside apron of the racetrack. Now, why exactly the cameras were showing Ty Gibbs after that, I have no idea. Let's find out together, shall we? Ty Gibbs is, let's see, no, it was Ross Chastain. So Ross Chastain slightly taps Chase Elliott, and Elliott loses control of his race car and just goes spinning into the inside apron. Now, Chase Elliott, like I said, is the hometown hero for this race. His father, Bill, is known best as Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. Dawsonville isn't too far away from Atlanta, it seems, so that kind of helps. Chase being the Georgia boy here. But, like I said, just a slight tap from the one car of Ross Chastain sends Elliott spitting. So, tough luck for Chase's crew, honestly. The race gets back underway after that caution flag with 55 laps to go, where Michael McDowell and Martin Truex Jr. would lead them back around to green. Now, there's a lot of pushing and shoving going around, thanks to Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin. Martin, by the way, actually took up the fight to Michael McDowell there. And then with 51 laps to go, there's 4-wide action here. This is something you don't see very often in NASCAR. 4-wide action, and Austin Cindric, Blaney's teammate, would take the lead with 51 laps left in the race. I am left to wonder how the crowd was reacting to that one. That was, like, I'm seeing this right now. This is truly, legitimately awesome to see. Oh, but during that brief moment of 4-wide racing, Martin Truex Jr. almost lost control of his car. Fortunately for everybody, he would keep control. The race would continue on. That was insane. That was pretty wild. However, we did get a caution with roughly 39 laps to go. And the reason for that, I believe, is Larson, Keselowski, and LaJoie. Kyle, Brad, and Corey were involved in an incident. And because so many cars were involved in incidents all throughout the day after that, only 7 cars were not involved in wrecks by the time 39 laps were left in the race. Those 7 are Austin Cindric, Josh Berry, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, Todd Gilliland, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr.? Well, what do you know? The ones who are ironically the back markers more often than not are actually doing well. But that was with 39 laps to go. So you have that little incident there. And let's see. Let me try and describe it for you here. Now that I have replays available. Let's see. So it's just a little... the racing's going well. And Brad Keselowski just loses control of the car. He just gets slightly loose going in. And he collects Kyle Larson and Corey LaJoie, who were just, like I said, at the wrong place at the wrong time. Tough luck for those 3, honestly. Now, the good news is it doesn't look like there was much damage to any of them, besides Kyle Larson pancaking the car onto the outside retaining wall, and his hood buckling in. So, it looks like those 3 would be fine to continue, but that incident would mar them the chance at victory. 20 laps left in the race, and the big one strikes yet again. Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe. Oh, actually, no, it's not the big one. It's just Chase Briscoe getting junked, unfortunately. Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin make contact. Chase Briscoe is left with the worst of it. His car is pretty much a done deal. Like, I'm looking at it right now, and his hood is just buckled in, the front bumper. Even the right front tire looks just, like, bent. Tough luck for the 14, dude. Like, that looks like his race was done for sure. And Hamlin did not get away unscathed either. He would be left, let's see. Oh, he would be left with like significant damage to the right front portion of his car, to the point where even his right front tire was not moving at all. So it looks like both of these cars would be done for the day after that, with just 20 laps to go. That's really sucks. The green flag would fly once again with 15 laps left in the race, and Ryan Blaney and Daniel Suarez would lead them to green. Keep an eye on these 2. Remember these names. We're going to come back to them here shortly. Austin Cindric, Blaney's teammate, or one of them at least, would push Blaney into a comfortable lead here by about 2 or 3 car lengths or so. Yeah, and that happened with 15 laps to go. It didn't take long for the yellow to come out once more. I believe this was the final yellow flag of the day, but no less a big one. After Josh Berry, the new driver number 4, who's taking over Kevin Harvick's car after he retired, he got slightly loose and he slams into the 77 car. And then from there on out, Josh Berry is just left with the worst of it. Chase Elliott spins out again on the inside apron, I believe trying to avoid that accident. And oh my goodness, some of these drivers really did do their best to avoid hitting Chase. Josh Berry would be done for the afternoon. Chase Elliott, it looks like he could drive the car on, but, you know, at what cost? Because at that point, you're really just pulling along, and just trying to finish the race. And with all of that recovery and everything I just described, it's time to talk about the finish. This is what left everyone talking, and I even made a presentation on this portion of the race for a class before coming to the show today. Like, I'm serious. It was just that good of a finish. So, the race gets underway for the final time with 5 laps to go, and it will become a battle between Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, and Kyle Busch. That was with 5 laps to go. By the time the white flag comes out, it would become a battle between 3 drivers. Those being Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, and Kyle Busch. At the time of the white flag, the 3 that I just mentioned were running first, second, and third respectively, with Blaney ahead. Suarez in second, Busch in third. So with that in mind, the white flag waves and there is no caution. Thank you, Lord. There is no yellow flag. Nobody wrecks in the back to bring out the caution to end the race early. Nope, they go all the way around to take the white flag, and they're gonna come around to take the checkered flag. Now, halfway through the final lap, Blaney seemed to be comfortably ahead until Kyle Busch got a run thanks to Bubba Wallace, who was right behind him, and Daniel Suarez also got a comfortable run thanks to Austin Cindric, who was right behind him. At that point, they go 3 wide into turn number 3. And they go 3 wide. They stay 3 wide coming out of turn 4 for the last time in the afternoon. And then, guess what, folks? Photo finish between Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, and Daniel Suarez. It was too close to call. It looked and felt like we were watching the original Cars movie all over again, but in real life. So we have a 3 wide photo finish there at the end of the race. And, well, it's time that we actually broke it down, because that's the main topic for the show for today, is breaking down this race finish. Inches, literally inches, separate the top 3. Daniel Suarez is the furthest inside, is onto the right side of this 3 wide sandwich, where Kyle Busch is the middle and Ryan Blaney is at the left side. Now, it took NASCAR and Fox a good minute to actually break it down and realize that there was a winner, because the finish was just so tantalizingly close, and their cameras admittedly are a little blurry. I mean, seriously, I would have thought that their cameras are better now than they were 20 years ago. Either way, the 99 car of Daniel Suarez was eventually declared the winner over Ryan Blaney, who was classified in 2nd place, and Kyle Busch, who was classified in 3rd place. Now, how close was that finish? Why am I making such a big deal over a photo finish here at Atlanta Motor Speedway? Well, 1, because it was a 3 wide finish and because it looked like it was pulled out of cars. And 2, because the margin of victory between these 3 was 0.003 seconds. Basically, it was 3/1000ths of a second that separated 1st place from 2nd place. And victory went to the 99 car of Daniel Suarez. It's a good day for Daniel Suarez fans, myself included. That was amazing to watch, honestly. This 0.003 second margin of victory is the 3rd closest finish in NASCAR Cup Series history, only behind the 2011 Talladega race, 2011 Talladega Spring race, which Jimmy Johnson would end up winning. And the closest finish in NASCAR history was between Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch way back in 2004 at Darlington Speedway. The Lady in Black is what they call her. Now, yeah, this is the 3rd closest finish. The other 2 that I just mentioned, the 2 closest finishes, those were decided by 2/1000ths of a second or less. So it was that close. This finish right here, like I said, 3rd closest in the history of the NASCAR Cup Series. Truly a moment that is definitely still ringing around with fans all across the nation, and especially for NASCAR fans in particular. This moment right here has really been talked about, and like I said, I did a presentation on this just before coming to the show, and people weren't left talking about it, which I'm so glad, honestly. It's good to see NASCAR in the headlines for good reasons, at long last. With this in mind, I'll run you through the top 10 finishers after the Atlanta Motor Speedway race, the Ambetter Health 400. Finishing in 10th place was Ty Gibbs for JGR. Chris Buescher would finish in 9th. Michael McDowell would finish in 8th. Ross Chastain and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. would finish 7th and 6th respectively. A highly respectable finish for Stenhouse, honestly. And the top 5 are Bubba Wallace in 5th and Austin Cindric in 4th. And like I mentioned, that photo finish between the top 3, Kyle Busch was classified in 3rd place, Ryan Blaney 2nd, and Daniel Suarez is classified the winner of the Ambetter Health 400. This is Daniel Suarez's 2nd career win in the NASCAR Cup Series. His first was at Sonoma in 2022, and with that, Suarez is the 2nd driver to get into the playoffs after William Byron did last week at the Daytona 500. So overall, one of the biggest and best races, I think, that I've seen at Atlanta Motor Speedway in quite some time, or at least that I've heard of. I didn't actually watch the race. I had to recap it myself also before coming to the show, in part because I was away for the weekend. Shout out Beach Catholic. Seriously, join them. Anyway, the Ambetter Health 400, there you go. That is your recap for this race. Whew, that definitely left a lot to talk about for sure. And I'm glad that it did. My post-race reaction was, now I felt a little bad, just a little bit, that I actually ended up missing it. But I was so glad, honestly. Like, I'm not going to complain about missing this race because, admittedly, I had a great time up in Big Bear. It was a lot of fun at that retreat. So, yeah, there you go. That's the Ambetter Health 400. I need a little break. I need a little breather after talking about this race because that was quite the thing to talk about. So, yeah, I think we're going to play a little bit of David Guetta here, after which we are going to talk about a preview of the upcoming Formula One World Championship season, which is set to kick off in Bahrain. So I'll play you a little Becky Hill and David Guetta. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. So far, so good. I'm going to turn the camera down in case someone walks in. How's the audio going? Is it? Yeah, is it reading out the way you want it? Oh, yeah. It's a good modifier. So you good? So now we're going to dig into the last portion of the show for today. That is a preview of the Bahrain Grand Prix, which is coming up this Saturday, ironically. I don't remember. Oh, yeah, there was a Saturday. The most recent Saturday night race was Vegas last year. All right. So we're going to dig in here to the Bahrain International Circuit. And from there on out, we're just going to continue on. And that will be the show for today. So thank you all for tuning in advance. Once this song is over, then we will get back to the show. So I'm going to put my headphones on. Let's get back to it. That was Remember by Becky Hill and David Guetta. Shoot, why do I keep forgetting to turn off Automate here? Anyway, that was the second oops that I've had today. Like, this day has just been full of oops here in the studio after getting locked out. But thank you. Shout out, by the way, before I continue further, thank you to the people who let me in, and thank you to the staff who quickly helped me get set up and everything. Like, seriously, thank you all so much. Even despite these weird oops moments that we're having today, we're pulling on very, very well. All right, y'all. here we go. So we got one more thing to talk about here on the show this afternoon, and that is going to be Formula One. And for the first time in 2024, it's race week, my friends. We are back. We are so back. We are ready for some action, some adventure this weekend. We're in for hopefully a pretty good race here this weekend at the Bahrain International Circuit, which is where we are going to kick off this new season of Formula One competition. And let me tell y'all, I'm pretty excited for this season. I don't know really if we're in for a super competitive season. I just hope we're in for a great season. That's all I get to say. And yeah, all right. So today we're going to dig into a little preview of what's coming up this weekend at the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix. First off, it's being held at the Bahrain International Circuit in a little town called Sakhir. This track was opened roughly around the early 2000s. Ground was broken for the racetrack in December of 2002. So there's that for you. The first Grand Prix ever held at the Bahrain International Circuit was in 2004 when drivers lined up under an unusually cloudy sky in the deserts of Bahrain. Bahrain is, like I said, a bunch of deserts, so it's very uncommon for clouds to show up around there. Now, what is this circuit like? The Bahrain International Circuit is a very interesting one. Most of these races, especially in recent years, have been held under the lights at night because Bahrain tends to be extremely hot during the day. Practice sessions there are known to be kind of brutal, actually. So, and not only that, but there's also a wind problem in Bahrain, where there's a lot of wind that can easily affect these race cars, which are just so sensitive to aerodynamics. So finding a decent setup to go around a racetrack like this is a bit of a challenge. The most challenging point, however, and I can confirm this having driven it in F123. No, I have not driven this racetrack in real life. I'm sorry to disappoint y'all. I just don't have that type of money just yet. So the track's most challenging point is a turn 10, 11, and 12, because this turn is very weird. You go in like straight ahead, and then you go downward and to the left. And it's a very off-camber thing. And trying to find the best braking point at that particular turn is a serious challenge because you're braking whilst you're actually turning into the corner. It can make for a serious challenge when it comes to finding a good braking setup and actually timing your brakes perfect. It's super easy to lock up in that particular section of track, and it happens far more often than not. Turn 12 after that though, like once you actually do get off of that turn, you are flying down one of 3 DRS zones that are found in the racetrack. We'll talk about DRS zones here shortly. So, given the nature of the racetrack, people who are going to attend the Bahrain Grand Prix, that's frequently called the duel in the desert. Now, away from the racetrack, Bahrain, there's a lot of things to do. Apparently, you can catch a lot of sun rays, which are plentiful out in the deserts. And there's a 33-island archipelago kingdom featuring some jaw-dropping resorts. There's also a karting circuit called the Bahrain International Karting Circuit, located right next door to the racetrack, and according to F1.com, it's one of the world's top karting facilities. So its first Grand Prix was held in 2004. The circuit measures 5.42 kilometers in length, which makes for a pretty decent racetrack around. The track features 3 DRS detection zones. The first one is down the main straightaway. The second one is following turns 9 and 10, which is that downhill turn that I talked about. And the third one is after turn 13 and heading into turn 14. 5.42 kilometers in length, like I said earlier. I'm trying to convert it to miles for anyone who doesn't understand kilometers. I'm trying, but it's just giving me a bunch of weird baloney. So yeah, you just have to take my word for it. Torch, trust me, bro. And the fastest lap time turned during a race at Bahrain was a 1 minute 31.447. That was turned by Pedro de la Rosa in 2005, which was the second race to be held at the Bahrain International Circuit. Like I said, the first was 2004. Now, for several years, the Bahrain International Circuit has been hosting the Formula One season opener. Before that, it was actually Australia doing the honors. By the way, 5.42 kilometers is 3.36 miles. With 57 laps in store this weekend at the Bahrain International Circuit across a 3.36 mile circuit, you're looking at 308.23 kilometers, or give or take, wait for it, 191.5 miles. So almost 200, which is the standard distance for any Grand Prix anyway. So there you have it. That is your preview of the Bahrain International Circuit. Now, of course, we got to remember that last year was definitely the season of Red Bull. Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez were trading race victories in the first few races before Max Verstappen went on a total rampage and took up nearly all of them. Red Bull last season won all but one race. That was the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix, which Carlos Sainz ended up winning, and Carlos Sainz is now in a contract year. How does that make any sort of sense whatsoever? I have no clue. Don't ask me. But anyway, who are the favorites going into this race? Well, I can think of a few. All right? But take my opinion here with a grain of salt. I'm willing to hear out your opinions as well. Of course, I think Red Bull is definitely in for a strong start to the season. If we look at preseason testing, Max Verstappen did set one of the fastest laps of throughout preseason testing, and he did it, well, where else but the Bahrain International Circuit. Now, you might want to take that with a grain of salt, however, because admittedly, you don't get too much information from preseason testing. Your best bet is to actually go race. So Red Bull, nonetheless, though, I do think that they might actually do well. On day number one, Max Verstappen did top the leaderboard ahead of Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, and Pierre Gasly. Day number two, however, Carlos Sainz was at the top of the leaderboard, and Sergio Perez was right behind in second place. Sergio Perez, man. Now, Sergio Perez was actually 0.7 of a second behind Carlos, even though Sergio ran 129 laps. Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes would finish the second day of preseason testing in third place, with Lando Norris for McLaren and Daniel Ricciardo for RB rounding out the top five. Now, Max Verstappen did not run at all, neither did Alexander Albon nor George Russell in the second day of preseason testing. Now, what happened in the third day of preseason testing? It was not Carlos Sainz, it was Charles Leclerc who would top the day on top of the leaderboard, ahead of George Russell, who finished in second, but only just 0.04 of a second between George Russell, who finished preseason testing day number 3, in second place, ahead of Charles Leclerc was right ahead of him. Zhou Guanyu for Sauber would actually finish that day in third, ahead of Max Verstappen, who would finish in fourth. So whatever experiments that were going on with Sauber, it looked like it worked pretty well. On day number 3 of preseason testing, the only driver not to partake in any sort of track activity was Logan Sargent. He ran no laps throughout the day. However, Alexander Albon for Williams, because of that, I presume, he ran the most laps throughout preseason testing day number 3, running 121 laps, being the only driver of day number 3 to run over 100 laps of testing. In day number 2, the guy that ran the most laps was none other than Sergio Perez at 129 laps. Lewis Hamilton ran 123, so he came in second place in that counter, and Logan Sargent actually ran 117 laps during preseason testing day 2. Maybe that's why they decided to let him rest for the day. I don't know. Because 117 laps, 123, 129 laps. That's over double an actual Grand Prix race distance, especially coming up this weekend in Bahrain. So there you have it. So the Ferraris topped day number 2 and day number 3, with Red Bull topping day number 1. Now, I am left to wonder, like, will this actually mean anything going into the race? And my answer is, I don't know. I have no idea. A lot of us, of course, want to see Ferrari actually start to succeed and actually get back to winning ways. Because remember, they went an entire decade without any sort of championships or without any F1 World Championships. The last championship they won was 2008 or so. 2008, no, sorry, 7. Like Kimi Räikkönen. It's been a long time. That's my point. So Ferrari, I don't know, man. It's good to see that they're topping the leaderboards, but that's just preseason testing. What we really want to see is the actual race pace. I'm pretty sure Matt Gallagher of P1 with Matt and Tommy, he also wants to see Ferrari actually start to compete. Red Bull, though, definitely I think is poised to be the favorite to do well this weekend, and I can't see why not. And of course, McLaren, I think they could end up being the dark horse this weekend, honestly. Given that McLaren were the only ones who were actually able to take any sort of fight at all to Red Bull during the latter parts of the 2023 season, I think McLaren might have one of the best shots at doing anything, but it'll be interesting to see. For all I know, this might devolve into Ferrari and McLaren fighting for second place, whilst Red Bull absolutely runs away with it again. I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen because, admittedly, even though my favorite driver, Sergio Perez, runs for Red Bull Racing, I do want to see competition. I want to see these drivers actually take the fight and really start to battle it out for top honors. I think it's a little bizarre that one team is just absolutely running away with it all, but we'll have to wait and see. Honestly, we will have to wait and see. My favorites to do well are Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren. I hope I am right. We will have to wait and see. Now, one last thing before we call it a day for today. The Bahrain Grand Prix will be available to watch on television, and it will also be available to watch on F1 TV Pro. Now, here's a little bizarre thing. The Bahrain Grand Prix is set to be run on Saturday, March 2nd. Yeah, you heard that right. It's going to be a Saturday morning race for us here on the west coast of the United States. It'll be run at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's actually like when it's going to run. Saturday, March 2nd, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be sure you have that in mind or write it down somewhere. We're in for a pretty good weekend of Formula One action this weekend, and next week on the show, we will be recapping what went on there. Now, if you want to watch qualifying, that will be Friday morning, March 1st, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So if you have an 8 a.m. class, then I don't know. I don't really want to encourage you to multitask here, but if you can do it, more power to you. I've done it before, but you didn't hear that here. All right, so be sure to tune in to the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Saturday. And if you enjoyed the NASCAR race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which I'm pretty sure a lot of us here did, the next race that they have in store will be at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. If you can get out to the race, by all means, go for it. Otherwise, you will be able to watch it at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Fox Channel 11. You can also tune in on the Performance Racing Network radio station and on Sirius XM. That's the Pennzoil 400 presented by Jiffy Lube at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Sunday, March 3rd, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So make sure you convert that to your local time zones if you absolutely must. All right, team, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Grand Prix Talk. We had so much to talk about this episode of the show. Atlanta left us with a fantastic race. Looking forward to Vegas and looking forward to the start of a new Formula One season. So be sure to tune in next week, Wednesday, 11 a.m. here on 22 West Media or 22westradio.com on my YouTube channel, The Sergio Show. You can follow me at Smorstagram on Instagram. That's SMOR-stagram. My name is Sergio Morales. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We will catch you next week for another episode of Grand Prix Talk. Visit 22westradio.com for any and all upcoming shows that we're going to have. We've got a lot of good ones coming up pretty soon, including Yuck and a bunch of others. So be sure to tune in. Thank you all so much. See you next week. Take care. All right, y'all. That's it for today. Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next week.